Welcome to Benevolent Business, the podcast exploring how to build a business that positively impacts society, the community, the environment, and much more, discussing with business leaders and founders how they went about building their business and their unique journeys. Brought to you by your host, Hayden Bloomfield, and producer, David Proud.
It's me.
This week, we're joined by Emily Brown of Emily Brown Photography.
So Emily, the discussion we're going to have is a lot around the environmental impact of her business. So I thought it would be really good at the start of this episode to talk about one of my favourite companies, Brewdog, who I took some shares in, what's called Equity for Punks, last year. And so I get updates about the company, and they've been doing some amazing stuff in terms of their sustainability. So it started off with, they announced that they became carbon negative. So that means that they take out twice as much carbon in the atmosphere than they put in. And they do this because they got a 2,000 plus acre forest up there in Scotland. So that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. Because the next thing I saw, I was just having a look through their website. Next thing I saw, they got buy one, get one tree. And so if you buy any of their multi-packs off their website, they'll plant a tree. And they partner with Eden Reforestation Projects, who also are a non-profit based in California, and they work with developing countries to reduce extreme poverty as well. So that's pretty good already. I kept looking. And they also have the carbon negative crew. So all their staff, they ask them to track their carbon footprint in and out of work, and then the company actually makes it so they're carbon negative as well. So they reduce the double the amount of carbon that their staff use, and the staff don't have to worry about it. They can just go on doing their thing, knowing that everything they're doing is actually going to be beneficial for the planet in a way.
I'd like to think that would encourage the staff as well, like thinking, working and being part of that company and part of that team. It's certainly, I wonder if they have team meetings just purely around looking at who their energy suppliers are at home and what they're all doing in terms of where they're buying their clothes from, how they're sourced, the company ethos that they're supplying from. And hopefully you'd like to think that they're all sort of getting involved together with it. Because do you know how big the company is, how many staff there are?
Let me have a quick little search. So the thing is, I think it's probably a culture thing as well, because once you start doing stuff like that, you're going to be a lot more mindful about what you're doing. I mean, just getting them to track their carbon anyway, they're going to be thinking, oh, what can we actually do here? I mean, would you suddenly think, I'm going to use more carbon because I know that means that they're going to take that much out of the
on all day, yeah. Company's going to offset it anyway, it doesn't matter.
I can't actually find how many they got working for them, but it's going to be a lot because they've got at least like 20 pubs up and down the UK. They've got multiple breweries, and obviously all their delivery staff as well. So it's going to be a lot. It's in the hundreds.
I love the way it's definitely one of your top lists for the guests. It's definitely one of mine on the top list for get future guests, and we've now created an introduction pretty much based on the conversation anyway.
I mean, there's more I found. So last year they did another round of funding, which normally is called Equity for Punks, but this one was called Equity for Punks Tomorrow, and it is all based around sustainability. So before they did this, they gave an update on where they're at. And if you just search for Brewdog Tomorrow, a sustainability update, you'll see this amazing artwork that they made for this, and it's called Brewdog Make Earth Great Again, and then it's a polar bear fighting a Mecha Donald Trump with laser arms. So you need to see that. And I thought I'd just read this first part of it because I thought it was quite interesting. So it says, we thought we were doing our bit for the planet. We took plastic out of our supply chain. We made a protest beer when Donald Trump pulled out the USA out of the Paris Agreement on climate change. And we upcycled a lot of our waste streams, including using our spent grain to feed cows and using our spent hops as fertiliser. But after meeting Sir David Attenborough and hearing him deliver a talk on climate change, we started doing much more research into the matter, and then it hit us. It hit us like a 400-volt shock in a copper bathtub, the blindingly stark realisation that we were not doing anything like enough. And in fact, that we were massively contributing to the existential problem that our planet and our species are currently facing. An equally stark realisation followed soon thereafter. If we don't have a planet to brew beer on, then our whole business is pretty pointless. And I think that sums up some of the things we've been saying about benevolent business for these past few episodes as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Fully encompasses pretty much everything we're talking about. I'm just trying to find that photo of Trump, or the Trump and the polar bear. But I've gone on to the investment round. You said about, what is it, they raised $3 million.
So we'll get to that in a second. So some of the things that they were already doing was wind energy, and their UK electricity all now comes from wind power, which is incredible anyway. A lot of their used grain they also turn into biogas to fuel a lot of their delivery trucks, but they're also, we'll talk about this in a second, got a lot of electric vehicles for their delivery trucks as well. And they try and source all their ingredients around their brewery, so there's less transport there. But so the new round of funding, and what you was about to say, they raised £3 million in 11 days.
Yeah, have you seen what their funding round is though? It's for 20 million.
Well, in total. I mean, this article was from the 21st of September.
Oh, right, okay, because they're in... Maybe it's from then, because it's days remaining, 49 days. So here we go, 49 days remaining to invest. So far they've raised 16.5 million with a target of 20 million. So they're 83% there. So you can still buy shares.
You're tempting me now. I might go and get a couple more shares.
You're tempting me. I'm tempted.
So what they're doing with this money, they want to turn their electric vehicle, they want all their vehicles to be electric basically. They found that their biggest export market was in France, so rather than brewing the beer in the UK and then having to ship it over to France, they're actually going to build a brewery in France so that it's got less travel. And they got I haven't heard of this before, an anaerobic digester. Is that something you've heard of, Hayden?
Anaerobic digester, it's not something I've heard of.
So apparently it turns wastewater into green gas and clean water, which then they can also reuse in their brewery. And lastly, they have their Columbus hop farm, which is a 42-acre plot where they grow their own hops. And again, it means it's less transport time between the farm and the brewery as well, which is all just cutting down on their carbon footprint.
It's almost like aspects of vertical integration where they're bringing more and more things within the company. Great strategy. I still can't find this photo. Have you got this photo? I want to see a polar bear taking on Trump.
Hold on. Did it not come up when you...
No. I mean, this is an audio podcast, but I want to see the photo.
Well, exactly. I mean, people are listening on their phones or their computer, so...
Sorry to ruin it for everyone.
They can follow along and do this while we're doing it. Yeah, if you type in Brewdog Tomorrow Sustainability Update, it's the third result down. It's the first not ad. And I think it might actually be the artwork that they used for the beer that they made to protest Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. I've seen it now.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
Make Earth great again. Brilliant. It's inspiring. It's definitely made me think... Well, I do it anyway, within my own company and what we do and the way we practice business and the way we think about suppliers, the way we think about... Vertical integration as well is definitely something. I mean, my company personally is at a much earlier stage than Brewdog, much earlier stage, and so a 20 million rounding fund isn't viable, but doesn't mean we can't make little baby steps. So I mean, we're already doing that. When we've talked on that on other introductions in the podcast, but it's definitely encouraged me further to look at other things we're doing, even tiny little things like where we get toilet cleaner from and how we source different products for the van, and like, especially at the moment with the pandemic, what suppliers are and what we're using for safety. So we have a sanitation station in each van, so just looking at what that is. So obviously, like with little things like wet wipes, it's just mindlessly just think, okay, right, tick the boxes and make sure we've got hand sanitizer, wet wipes, soap, water, all these different things. But if you get down to it and you think, actually, wet wipes are probably the worst thing to put in there because they're non-biodegradable and they're... So what can we use instead that's going to be much more eco-friendly? And then you kind of think, well, if you've got hand sanitizer, soap with water, trying to remember what else we have in there. Pretty much everything you could. Anti-bac sprays. So if you've got all of that, do you need wet wipes if it saves on the environment? Or could you do something where you have a cloth that's changed every day, or multiple cloths that are changed every day? So then so it's all reusable stuff that can be washed.
I mean, you say it's like 20 million worth of investment, but surely there's government grants out there that you can take out to help you be more sustainable as a business.
Way ahead of you. I just think I bought Lecky.
Okay, yeah.
That was a low-cash grant for $8,000, just over.
And what did you had to put in a certain percentage and then they'll pay the rest?
Yeah, so with the low-cash grant in particular, it varies each year, but in my personal experience, that year they fund 30%, and I think in other years you get 20%. Whereas if it's something particularly environmentally friendly or in the realm of sustainability, it'll be 30%. So for me, it was you had to put together a project with a value up to $35,000, and they would give you up to $30,000, sorry, and they would give you then 30% at $10,000. So I put together a number of different items that the company was going to buy, and had to obviously do all the paperwork and due diligence around how it's going to make us more sustainable, how it's environmentally friendly compared to the other options, and why we're going down that direction. You have to show so much paperwork. Like, grants are free money, but it's not free money. There's a lot of T's to cross and a lot of I's to dot. And if you put the dot in the wrong place, you have to redot it.
You just made me think of something, though. Like, maybe if anyone's got the answer, they can leave it in the comments on the socials. But is there like a web hosting company that's carbon neutral? Because obviously web hosting, you're going to be using a lot of power powering up all those servers. Is there a company that plants trees for every server that they have? I'd love to know the answer to that.
Oh, interesting. That's going to make it very complicated if we find one, though, and I'd feel obliged to move over with my web hosting.
Oh well. or you can use it as like a bit of leverage to go to your web hosting company and go, look, they're doing this. This is really important to me. Would you look at doing something like this?
Exactly, because this baffles me that we don't do. I mean, we do a lot of planting, but we don't do anything that's like buy one get one tree. Probably should, but we do so much planting now, because I do like the idea of keeping track of the plants. Because even just on one project alone, in Sevenoaks last year, we planted in the region of 1,000 plants in a garden, which has obviously done a lot to increase the natural habitat and take in some carbon and release more oxygen. So we do a lot.
It's definitely something to think about, and it's something that we're going to talk more about after Emily's interview, because that's one of the subjects.
So without further ado, let's crack on. Over to Emily. So welcome, Emily. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for coming on. So to get things kicked off, can you give us all a quick 30-second snippet into what exactly is Emily Brown Photography?
Of course. So I'm a photographer, and I live in the beautiful Garden of England. So I specialise in images taken outdoors, and that kind of covers a mix of things. My style is very nature oriented, but I work with families, capture weddings, and also work with businesses as well.
Perfect. So where did your journey into photography begin?
Oh, okay. Do you want the long version or do you want the short version?
Medium.
Okay. So, a bit of a depressing story, actually, but it all worked out for the better. When I was at school starting my A-levels, my dad actually passed away. He'd been ill for a couple of years. And at the time, I was doing 4 essay-based subjects, and I missed a bit of school. And when I went back, I just couldn't get my head around history. I think I'd missed too many names and dates and important links, and pretty much spent most history lessons hiding in the bathroom crying, which wasn't ideal. So I had an amazing headmaster, and I've got a lovely mum, and we had a meeting about me changing history for photography, so that I could have kind of a bit more of a creative lesson in my week. Now, I think that was such an easy decision, but at the time it kind of changed the plans that I'd had for my future, which then also kind of added into like, oh, would my dad want me to do this or not? But I ended up doing photography, and it was actually the highest A-level grade that I got, and it got me into my first choice uni, which was King's College in London. And then it kind of went from there. I went to King's to study film, so slightly different, but I'd always loved the visual arts in general. But King's is fab, but it's a very academic uni. So it was watching loads of movies, which was amazing. Got a lot of stick for that. But then analysing like the colours, the shot types, the composition. There was no actual film making. So I started coming home just to use my camera on the weekends, photograph friends of friends, all for free, all just for kind of fun and a hobby. And I did that the whole way through my degree until people kind of started asking, do I do weddings? What do I charge for christenings? And I'd never really thought about doing it as a business until one day it kind of just light bulb moment. These people actually are offering to pay me for the thing that I do that I love. And that was 5 years ago. So I charged my first client the day I handed in my dissertation, went and got some professional qualifications from the London School of Photography, moved back home, and that's me now.
So that original inception into photography, where you said about it was a meeting with your school during A-levels, was that from the school's perspective, your teachers coming up with that idea for you, or was that a family, or was that your own sort of idea of changing history?
I'd wanted to do photography anyway, but at the time, like I was quite a good student. I had my sights set on like Oxford, Cambridge. I was already doing drama, and that's about as artsy as you can go, to be honest, if you're aiming for those kinds of schools. So my dad suggested doing history. I was good at it, didn't love it, but it was going to guarantee me a decent grade. And he'd also done history, so there was kind of a little connection there as well. It just kind of worked out really, actually. But I was the one, growing up that had the little wind-up Kodaks on holiday and everything anyway, which is why I'd originally been interested in doing it. So yeah, just a funny twist of fate, really.
Changing your A-level there to photography, did you find the other subjects you were studying, was it something that they sat and sort of fell to secondary subjects, or did you still keep momentum with academics while building up this photography passion?
Yeah, no, I think I did keep up the momentum, just because obviously it'd been a tough couple of years. So I kind of kept going with them, but at least with the photography, that kind of get me a bit more of a creative outlet, and I could kind of not super relaxed, but sit back a little bit, and something completely visual is different to something completely literary or whatever. So yeah, it was kind of the best of both really at that point.
So with your photography now, where you have your specialisms that you work with, you talked about it all began just because people started asking the question, how much for this, how much for that? Did you find that your specialisms came from that and just was met with the demand, or is it something that you explored your passions? How did it work?
I think really they've only kind of come to prevalence over the last few years. I've worked really hard, especially over 2019, 2020, to really figure out where I want to direct my passions. I think a lot of it comes from me as a person, like being the only person in the business. I think I'm quite lucky that, I get to shape it to be something that I love. I feel incredibly grateful not everyone gets to do that. I've always been a nature lover anyway, and I knew sort of graduating in London the type of photography that I generally liked. I couldn't really achieve there and pay rent at the same time. So moving back home kind of helped that. But then I did try a bit of everything. When I got my sort of professional qualifications, we learned everything. We learned food, we learned studio, we learned street, which was really interesting. But I think I knew pretty quickly what I liked and what I didn't like. And again, starting to build a reputation kind of locally at the start, especially when I was so young starting up as well, I did try a bit of everything just to kind of get out there. But I think over time I realised actually what I really love doing, and I'm lucky enough that the type of aesthetic that I've got and the brand that I've built lets me kind of work with the 3 different categories of people, because I love that variety as well.
One thing I want to go into with your photography that I found fascinating was when you said about when you produce, obviously do the shoots and everything, and then you produce the photos or the photo albums and everything, the way that you've gone about producing those and the materials you use. So can you go into the story of what exactly that is and how it came about?
So yeah, the thing I'd mentioned to you before was that being kind of this nature lover, my partner and I had tried to implement some more kind of eco-friendly processes in our lives anyway. And that started with literally, simple things like reusable straws, travel cups. I am an iced latte fan, and the amount of plastic that I was using by going to Costa and Starbucks was insane. So things like that here. And it kind of dawned on me that, as a photographer, especially now in like the digital age, I am using a ton of electricity, which I don't feel great about. I mean, these video lights, batteries, which is not good at all. So it kind of struck me that actually if I'm trying to make these changes in my home, then I should try and make changes in my business too. So this was kind of part of my really big change in 2019. The album you're talking about, I changed suppliers. So now all of the prints and products that I offer after somebody's shoot, they are high quality, they're luxury, but they're also as sustainably sourced from the UK as possible. So the wedding albums in particular, they come from a lovely company in Yorkshire. They even do frames that are made of like local driftwood, which I just think is brilliant. And the albums have leather options if you want to go for that. That's quite popular for wedding albums in particular, but that is again sourced as sustainably and cruelty free as possible. Otherwise there's vegan material options, the paper is all recycled and recyclable, and the same thing with my business cards are made from recycled t-shirts. And what else did I tell you before? My partnership with Tree Sisters, that's an important thing. All of that was kind of starting to fall into place, but my partner and I had been talking quite a lot about how to actually give back and offset the energy that I was using. So we started to mull, you know, is there maybe like a tree planting initiative that I could do locally? And to be honest, it was all getting a little bit overwhelming because we were talking about having our own like tree planting ceremonies. And I was like, how on earth do you go about even finding the land to do that? Like, no idea. And I then came across a fantastic organisation called Tree Sisters, who are an organisation that not only supports the reversal of deforestation, but also supports women around the world in countries where maybe they don't have kind of the same rights and freedoms as we do over here. So what I do is I give a percentage of my proceeds each month to Tree Sisters, and that goes towards women planting trees in areas where habitats are being destroyed, like Uganda, Brazil, the Congo, places like that. And also I gift a tree to each of my wedding couples as well, which is really cool because they can then log on and see how the Emily Round Photography forest is growing, and that just has a really good effect, not only on like the local communities but also the animals that are losing their homes too. So it just ticks so many boxes.
When you say they can log on and see how it's growing, what do you mean by that?
You can actually view sort of the amount of trees, where the trees are, and they're really good also at publishing stories actually from the communities where it's making a difference. So it's really cool. There's some really in-depth statistics so that you can actually monitor how much you're giving back, and particularly if you are in the habit of kind of actually tracking your carbon or your emissions and all that kind of stuff, you can actually see whether you're offsetting it, which is really cool.
There's something really beautiful that I like about your service. As a photographer, it's not just about having, like in using you for photography in particular, it's not just about having someone come along and take nice photographs. There's so much behind the business, and that sort of bounces back similar to previous guest Benita in the series. So like with her book, it's not just about purchasing this book and hearing great stories. It's in similar to what you're doing there with supporting communities that are less fortunate than us, and also supporting with deforestation and then the reforestation of planting of trees. And it's something that really is like a benevolent part of business, is having that great service, doing, especially with your line of work, something so creative and beautiful, but then the secondary part of that in the background that people don't necessarily see, but by their money going to your business is supporting so many great causes. And I think that's a huge benefit, and that is a big part of why you're such a benevolent business. Going back to when you said about your albums and then using sustainably sourced materials, and I love the driftwood idea, that sounds amazing. How did you go about with that? What was the journey of finding a supplier? Was that quite a challenge, or is it something that we can all do quite easily in, well, obviously for your, what's your experience as a photographer with the photo albums?
I think for me, I literally just took to Google. I mean, I knew there must be things out there, and my starting point was that, okay, if I want to be sustainable, I want to start locally as well and try and support some other independent UK businesses. I did trawl through quite a lot of websites, but it's just finding those right words, I suppose, which I think is also very helpful, that the way that I've kind of shaped the brand now, obviously like the eco side goes very hand in hand with my style of imagery anyway, but what's been really cool to see is the type of clients that I'm now working with, or the friends that I'm making, it all goes hand in hand, and we all kind of have shared values. So that's been really helpful too, because I'm getting to know people that have kind of the same values but maybe are further down their journey, or maybe in a completely different line of work, so they've had different experiences and come into contact with different people. So that's been really helpful too, because there's been quite a lot of education from them. But for the albums in particular, it literally was just so lucky that everything I wanted I found and I just moved straight away and was like, okay, hit me up with samples, I need to see everything, thanks.
So there's also been a huge benefit that in that research and finding those suppliers, it's helped you build a network of other people along the similar lines. But has there been any sort of detriment to that? So for example, like with using these sustainable materials, does that come at like an additional cost? So for a photographer that's just going, right, who can I use out there? Who's easy? Who's cheap? Does that then mean that for you become more expensive in that respect, or your cost of sales and or your running costs become more expensive?
So luckily I haven't seen that. I think the things I was concerned about initially were even though, you know, we are now in 2021, I think depending on the type of product, there is still kind of a stigma around it's recycled or it's eco-friendly in terms of like aesthetic and feel. So I wanted to make sure that what I was offering was still very clearly, especially for a wedding day, like it's luxury, your memories are still going to be printed beautifully on this paper. So my pricing hasn't changed. I think the only thing that my clients are seeing is, or maybe even not seeing, you're making me think now, is obviously my difference behind the scenes. The only difference for them really is getting gifted trees, and the kind of discussions that we might have around the extra products, but it hasn't really changed my packages at all. So I don't think it's really impacted them. Really kind of what I've implemented is in the products afterwards, which are optional anyway. So luckily I haven't had to like massively hike up prices. And then for everything else, everyone who just gets sort of a standard family package, they get digitals included, and then it's really just down to me to offset my carbon in the background. So luckily not.
So with you said about your drive to become as environmentally friendly as possible and sustainable within your business began in your own personal life with your partner looking at the things you're doing and making those small changes. So where did that original drive for becoming environmentally friendly and sustainable come from?
Interesting question. I think quite a lot of it might be down to the fact that we are both like Kent born and raised, and also I think the ages that we are. So like, not to throw shade at anyone younger than than like 20s, but we've always said we feel quite privileged that actually we were born when we were, because we still had that kind of time before technology. So for example, like having to get off of the computer because my mum needed to use the phone, like the perks of dial-up. And so we still had that kind of like running outdoors and building dens and forts and all of that kind of thing that I think actually is really important, because we weren't just glued to like a console or the TV or whatever. So I think part of it came from that we've just always cared about greenery in general. But then I think it is just seeing as time has gone on. I'm a big Attenborough fan, and he obviously shares some pretty scary home truths. So I think it's just seeing the evidence as well, and what we're kind of doing to the planet, but also like how easily it can be reversed with small changes as well. I don't know if you guys saw his most recent kind of show that was out at the end of last year, but he actually ended that one differently to normal by showing the progress that has been made in different countries and like nature reclaiming areas that people have moved out of, and companies doing amazing things. And that was really, really positive. And it actually showed, okay, actually we don't need to do a ton of stuff. If we all just make small changes, then it's going to be sounds super preachy, but like a better world for like our kids and our kids' kids. So yeah, it sounds all very big, but that's kind of the stuff that made me think about it.
No, I wholeheartedly agree there. And so when you talk about feeling privileged in a sense for growing up in a time before everybody had smartphones and technology, and I kind of remembered that. Dial-up was kind of the thing, but I don't think I was old enough to like know that it was a thing.
There's like only a few years between us. You always make me feel so old when you say things like that.
But with that, so you talk about then with having that upbringing helping. So was it something that from that young age you was conscious of the environment, or is it just in growing up and seeing the world change that you've then started to have those thoughts?
I think it's more that. I think I think the only thing I did kind of really have growing up was just like just a general love for the outdoors. But really it has been as I've been getting older and, you know, even things like going on my own health journey, as you do when you start to approach 30 and whatnot, you know, hiking, all that kind of thing. I just love doing that. That's my happy space, basically. So all of that kind of intertwines. And then you start seeing things on the news and social media, and it does make you think, you know, all those videos of plastic straws and the turtles, and I won't go into detail, but it's just so simple. It's really simple. So I think it's just a general kind of love that was always there. Yeah, just became more apparent with seeing the world change. So kind of both.
One thing you mentioned there where you said about with social media, seeing more and more information around, like, well, because that's one thing that I was interested to hear about your background, saying about growing up in a time before we all had technology. Whereas, because on the one hand, I think there's the benefit that with technology, it means that from a very young age, you've got access to this like computer in your hands that can give you all that information that, going back to, when we were younger, we didn't have that. So we, from a very young age, we didn't have access. Whereas now it's just like you can open your phone and be like, whoa, look, you can just see the information and see the real footage live there of the detriment that we are causing as a species to the planet. So, but it's interesting to see your perspective from how that exposure to nature more so has then evolved as you've got older and you've sort of grown that consciousness from it, which is really interesting. I wonder how younger people would, when younger people reach our age, how that would impact them. But so with that, and obviously you talked a lot about nature walks and hiking. So finding your happy place there, how has lockdown impacted there? Does that mean that you're spending a lot more time out hiking?
Yeah, I was. This lockdown, like, let's not go there. This one I'm finding a bit more difficult, to be honest with you. I think just because it's winter as well. So I think the first lockdown actually, I hesitate to say, because I know a few people struggled, but like I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, it was spring and the bluebells were out, and I did a couple of like fun projects for myself. We really used the exercise hour. And that really was helpful. But there's a gorgeous bluebell woods like out the back of our house. So I don't know if you guys saw, I actually photographed a Lego wedding that I posted on my Facebook. There was a day where I was meant to be photographing a wedding in a castle. Obviously didn't happen, but I wanted to do something kind of fun for myself and also for the couple to honour the fact that it was still their wedding day. And I have a massive Disney nerd and also like a 7-year-old in my head. So I have a Beauty and the Beast Lego set and I actually set it up in the garden. It comes with a castle and like Lumiere and Cogsworth and all the characters, and I got them married. They even did a cake cut shot and a balcony scene, and then I took the bride and groom to the Bluebell Woods for their couples photos and looked like an absolute lunatic in the middle of the woods with my little Legos. But that was really fun, and I think it, as much as I've missed working, and you know, I feel terrible for, I've had some couples who've had to rearrange their weddings 4 times. You know, it really has been a shame. But I think being forced to stop actually was quite helpful. I kind of found my creativity photography-wise again. I very rarely get to shoot for myself, and I realised that. So that was really fun. And yeah, it was warm and it was sunny, and it was, you know, the downtime doesn't matter too much when you can be out by the paddling pool.
That is the most, I think that's one of the most just like happy stories I've heard out of lockdown, with that like taking Lego pieces out into the forest and shooting. Did you send those to the couple?
Yeah. So
what did they say?
They saw them. They thought it was great. Yeah. I want to do more actually. They, if they see this, hello. They have a little boy, and I was actually thinking of maybe getting one of a prints done or something for his room. Or he's an awesome little man. But yeah, they again are one of the couples that their venue now can't do next year, so they don't know when they're getting married, which is a shame. So
they're still waiting.
They are.
I definitely think a note for when they can finally get married, there should be the mix of both photos in that.
I know, that'd be so album. Cool.
That would be good to have a Lego themed wedding.
Exactly. Yes.
There we go. They are listening. There's the plan.
They go, I'm just going to turn up in a bell dress. Hope you don't mind.
Don't upstage the bride.
Oh yeah, dang it.
So with, obviously you talked about different lockdowns have had a different impact on you. So as a business, how has that journey gone? So obviously assuming in lockdown 1, that's it overnight, well, within the space of that time, was that it? Doors are closed, business is shut, or?
Yeah, the first time pretty much. Obviously, this lockdown, there's fewer restrictions in terms of people's mental health. Like, the fact you can still have your support bubbles and you can still meet up with one person. I technically can still work at the moment with businesses if it's done safely. The first time, I don't know, generally people refer to me as like very cheery and very bubbly and optimistic, and for the most part I am. So I think last year I was just very focused on riding the wave, and I think what I'm trying to stay grateful about is that, firstly, there's a larger cause going on, so like it's fine. But also every time the restrictions eased and kind of the world opened up again, I was busy, which was really, really helpful. So there were kind of intermittent bits where I was working again, which was great. This time it wobbled me when 21 started, to be honest. I think I went back to work officially on the 4th and ended up just having a complete meltdown and then a fight with my mum because she tried to be helpful, and that was not what I needed at the time. I think I sat down to do kind of my plan for the year and then thought, well, who knows what's going to happen or when I can work, so what's the point in me trying to plan? But I'm fine now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think it's making short-term plans at the moment, isn't it? You can only plan sort of 2 weeks ahead. So you're just doing whatever you can in those 2 weeks, to be honest.
Definitely. And I think it did, like I've already said, I think it does feel different this time. I think probably because we spent so much of 2020, like everyone was being so optimistic and saying, oh, next year it'll be fine, it'll be gone and it'll be our year, which obviously like that was very optimistic. But also it is just the weather. So I think the first couple of times I really used that downtime to focus on myself, and I kind of got into a really good fitness routine, and I was really creative. I was using the time to do things like all the admin I needed to catch up with or update social media or websites, all that stuff that always gets put off. And this time I have a good plan to do that, and I'm probably back in the headspace to do it. But there is a slight difference, I think, when you feel motivated one day to maybe go for a long walk or something, and then you look out the window and it's pouring down. So yeah, it feels a bit tougher this time, but we'll get through it.
So when you mentioned in the sort of middle section of whatever lockdown 2, when doors started to open again, and you were saying like you could sort of go back to business there, how did you find your service had altered? Because obviously it wasn't just a case of, well, especially like if you're doing weddings, it's not just a case of everyone has a wedding and you're there and you're shooting, everyone hugging together. So how had your business evolved there to start opening the doors again?
So I think it's just downsizing, really. The family work has been really lovely, especially when restrictions were easing, because obviously everyone was just so grateful to be able to spend time together and see each other and get outside. So that's been lovely throughout. The weddings, they did shift. I'm so glad that I did still have weddings, but they went down to sort of as little as literally just the bride and groom and 2 witnesses. So I'm glad that people still did it, especially if, they want to get married, they still got married, which is fantastic. And I do think in that respect, there's slightly an element of it being a bit more simplified and a bit more about the couple, which is really lovely. But they're all going to have parties and celebrations when it's safe. So yeah, it's really just the time frame, to be honest. Like I even did a wedding just before Christmas with the 15-person limit, and that was a bit funny. I remember doing my first one after the first lockdown, where all the guests are in masks and all the chairs are spaced out. That was probably the strangest thing, like going into venues that I've worked at so many times and the room looking completely unrecognizable, because even husbands and wives, one was sat here, one was sat over there. And I think that the first thing, like from behind the camera, the first thing that I really noticed, which was really silly that I hadn't thought about it, was all the pictures of the guests kind of looked the same during the ceremony, because you can't see their emotion whatsoever. And I hadn't thought about the impact that people wearing masks would actually have on the images themselves as well. But yeah, it's been busy, which is great. So people are still managing to spread the love.
Do you think, with thinking of that, and hopefully, we're all trying to have the optimism to say that we're going to be out of it soon and back to quote normal, or a new normal as it will be. So with all of this experience, do you think it will alter the way that you'll do photography? I mean, with weddings, I suppose weddings in particular, because just thinking on those, the restrictions we've had, that will be the biggest significance in going back to the new normal. So how do you think it would how has it evolved your service when we do find the new normal? Has it taught you anything in that sense?
I think so. I think making me think today. I think, I'm not sure the service that much has changed, but more, again, kind of like the frequency, my expectations have changed, probably. So instead of, having X amount of 100-person weddings and going here, there and everywhere in the distance that I'll travel and things like that, that has all been kind of put on hold. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I actually have two of my friends are getting married in Belfast in August. They were meant to be getting married last August. That obviously didn't happen. So we can all keep our fingers crossed for this August. That's going to be my first destination wedding. So it's just things like that. I always did have quite a good mix of large events, large birthday parties, anniversary parties, that kind of thing, and weddings, as well as like smaller registry office weddings. So I was already, I think, used to doing them. It's just the amount that I'm now doing them. But I think one thing I'm kind of trying to spread at the moment, and you'll see my waffly Instagram live from today was about it as well, is I think micro weddings are going to be the way forward for at least the rest of this year. And quite a lot of venues and florists and videographers, they're all kind of changing the packages that they offer that they've never had to offer before, on such a small scale. But by offering that, it still makes people's days magical, which is obviously the whole point. So, I think it's more like what we've had to kind of reshape behind the scenes.
And so having these micro weddings, is that forcing you to be more creative with your shots as well?
A little bit. I think especially with winter, which is always the way anyway. But for example, the wedding before Christmas, in this gorgeous barn, shout out to Swallows Oast in Ticehurst, really gorgeous venue. They have a fantastic like woodland trail. It's all lined with trees, and then it opens up onto these gorgeous fields, and there's a pond and a rowboat, and it's incredible. But not only was the wedding obviously within the 15 people, but it was also hammering down with rain the entire time, which kind of wrote off going, into the fields and things. The bride was quite cold by the time we'd finished the photo. So yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the usual things, but you do feel, I suppose, when somebody's had to downscale their wedding, particularly this couple, they were actually going to get married in Vegas. That obviously didn't happen. Then they had, I think, 2 more plans in between Vegas and actually getting married. So it's kind of like trying to make it magical for them and also fill the time, especially if it's winter and it's raining as well. So yeah, it is a bit more trying to get creative with what you've got, backgrounds, and the family shots have been tricky too. Sorry, I've got my brain going now. Like the first one I did, the families can't have the family photos because they're not in a bubble. Who knew? So it's, finding ways to get creative. I have done the kind of typical gorgeous wide shot with everyone in their support bubbles. But I think, things like that are going to be historic actually when we're through this. So yeah, it's been interesting.
That's one thing that I did wonder, like touching back on being able to work back in second lockdown, is like one of the biggest things for, as you alluded there, one of the biggest things for weddings is all coming together and doing that group photo. And it's you talked there about having the mask on, so there's no expression, so I guess just get a smiley face mask. But that must be really challenging to actually capture the real emotions of the day when no one can be near each other and no one can have any expression because they're all masked up. But it's to actually be able to achieve that, it still is phenomenal to try and to actually be able to capture any emotion of the day. So going back on to you first starting the business, was it because you mentioned about the alterations you made within your business stemmed from your personal life, but in going into business, was it something that there was a drive there to make an impact from day one? Starting a business, was it, I want to have a business that makes an impact, that is positive for the world, or was there any thought around that?
I was going to say, is it really bad to say no?
No, it's fine. Be honest.
Probably not. I think to start with, I knew what I enjoyed and what I was good at, and that's definitely the style that I've got and I've enhanced over the time. I think my biggest concern at the time was actually, firstly, starting up the business straight out of uni. I was young, that was a gamble. And I think, again, this kind of like bittersweet situation that had my dad not passed, I actually used a little bit of money to get my first proper camera for the business. So again, it's one of those, like, it was kind of a bittersweet situation, but I thought, I'm going to give it a go. I never really thought I was cut out for like office life or really working for anyone else. So I thought I'll give it a bash. And then I think the kind of the eco stuff, I think that has come with partly just getting older in general, and also then just the people that I've been lucky enough to interact with throughout the last 5 years of the business. I think that's all kind of intertwined to where I am now, and hopefully where I'll keep going. So yeah, I don't actually think it was there at the start. Maybe I wish it was now you've said that.
No, it's completely fine not to be. When I started, I like fell into owning a business, and just because I couldn't get a job really, but yeah, at the start I was more like, business, money, I'll make loads of money and I'll have a Bentley, a Rolls Royce, and Aston, and who cares about it's just profits and money. And and then that completely changed. But I don't think it's there's nothing wrong with having, not to say it's not right or wrong, but there's nothing wrong with changing your value. Your values evolve as you get older, and our minds grow. So on that, obviously your philosophies and your thoughts have changed a lot in the time that you've had a business. So how do you see your business impacting further? What developments do you want to see in your own company?
I have kind of goals that I feel were annoyingly paused. Obviously last year, I had hoped to expand in terms of travel. I was lucky enough to go to Austria in 2019 to photograph one of my friend's yoga retreats. And that was really awesome, because that was kind of the first thing where I could say, actually, travel is an option in this business. And that was great because she also happened to be pregnant at the time. So we did have maternity photos like in these Austrian mountains and by this like ice river, which was incredible. And from sort of a nature point of view as well, not only was I working with like a health and wellness based business, which goes perfectly with the nature side, but also just exploring this completely different landscape. And actually that taught me probably quite a lot about how different things like the light are in different places. Like my settings that I probably would have used here, just so different for all the colours and all the light was just so vibrant and different. So that taught me an awful lot, and that's led me to now also be working with the couple who are getting married in Belfast. So I would like to travel some more. Yeah, I think travel, to be honest, at the moment that's all I can really think of, just because that pause button has been pushed on it. I'm like raring to go when it's allowed.
So let's hear top destination. Where would be the one country, town, city that you'd want to go? Or would it be a specific shoot in mind, whether it's a wedding or...
Yeah, do you know, that's... I can't choose between two. I think really the two things that we're missing here, one, Caribbean island. And two, somewhere really, really, really snowy. Like proper snow. Some of the photographers sort of over in like North America and Canada have done the most incredible like wedding and maternity shots of like, if you imagine sort of baby bumps in vibrant red dresses just against this white snowy mountain backdrop. Oh, it looks incredible. And I would just love to be able to have like taken that photo and be responsible for that. And same with kind of the beaches and the ocean. Obviously we've got nice sandier places along the coast, but doesn't compare to palm trees, does it really?
And that blue sea as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Instead of green.
Yes.
Well, with that in mind, then, if anyone is listening that's in sort of Canada and got
yes,
3 feet of
please.
snow. With that then, in terms of, like you talked about electricity as well, so have you got plans to how you could, I suppose, evolve that or adapt your working methods? And as well, I don't know anything about the technology in photography, so how do you see yourself impacting there with, as you said, because you're very conscious of the amount of electricity used, so how can that be improved?
I think it's still a work in progress. I think there definitely are better sort of things I could have in place already. I'm not fantastic at actually keeping track of what I'm using. There are fantastic websites that you can do that through. You've got your electric van, and you very rightly threw me shade for not yet having an electric car.
Yeah, why not get one?
Right, I'm getting there. They still cost money. There's more things also kind of in our personal lives too that we could do better. But I think business wise, it's just being more conscious of decisions. So for example, these video lights, I've no idea why they didn't come with rechargeable batteries, so I've been draining AA's, which is outrageous. And I know that the batteries are out there, so I've got to find them so that I can stop doing that. I just bought a new like flash gun that has an actual proper rechargeable battery so that I'm not wasting. I think small things like that I think are where I need to go next, and then we'll see.
So with that then, you've sort of given us some snippets there of like some valuable information of how to start, but is there anything else you can give in terms of, for either someone in their personal life or in business, they've got this drive, they're conscious of, or they want to be more aware of the impacts they're making and become more sustainable, more environmentally friendly. So what advice would you give to someone that wants to make, one, a difference in their personal life, and two, if they've got a business, how would they make a difference there?
Things that I'm by no means an expert. Like, I've made small changes that easily fit around my lifestyle, and I think that's kind of the one thing that I have said publicly before, is you need to find the things that work for you. You know, if you don't ever take drinks anywhere, you don't drink water, then getting a reusable cup probably is not where you want to start. Same with, you know, kind of the maybe more drastic things, like if you want to be vegan, maybe start by like cutting down your meat portions, or actually researching the impact these things have and seeing which ones you can easily fit around your normal lifestyle, so that it's not like a drastic massive change if you don't want it to be. Business wise, I think it's just doing the research. I think using the websites where you can actually track are super, super helpful. Horrible, but helpful. Mine is not great. But there's also some fantastic accreditations for businesses too that I've been exploring. I don't yet kind of have the answer, but there is, for example, for people in the wedding industry, just because I know a little bit more about that, there's a fantastic platform, which I'll need to get back to you on the name of because I've just completely spaced on it, but it's great, where you can actually fill in sort of a quiz and it gives you a score, like a green score, and they only accept people, you know, above a certain score because those are the people who are really making an impact, which is great. So I think just like I did, small things in your life, and then research to see if there's a way that you can implement that into your business. And I guess also having the conversations with people, because this is quite a hot topic at the moment. So people might have done the research that you need to do and already kind of have some suggestions. So I think it's just talking to people as well.
I think that's a really valuable point, and like something that you shied from there in saying that you're not an expert, but I think that's one of the most key pieces of information that can help someone. Is the whole point is you haven't got to be an expert, and you haven't necessarily got to talk to an expert. It's just a case of making your mind more conscious of it, and just start thinking, as you said, just start thinking about what you use and what is going to be easy to change. That's almost like look in your rubbish bin and what are you throwing out all the time, and start with a change there. So on that subject, one thing I always like to close on is thinking of the world today. So what is one thing that's prevalent in the world today that you hope will be abolished in the future?
COVID. No.
Oh yeah, I suppose that's top of everyone's list.
Yeah, so you're going to keep getting the same answer to this.
Well, no one said that yet. No one said that.
You're joking. Then
No.
I'll take it. I'll take it then. I was joking, but if no one said it, I'll take it. I think the last, almost year has been incredibly difficult for so many people in so many different ways. So yeah, at the forefront of my mind, COVID.
Get rid of it. No. That is a very good answer, a very relevant answer, and I think everyone would agree with you there. So thank you,
Hopefully,
Emily.
like in 2 years' time, people will listen to this episode and they go, "What's she on about?"
The heck is COVID? Yeah, exactly.
This will be used in history class.
I know. Crazy.
Well, thank you for coming on, Emily. And before we go, where can we find you? So for anyone listening out there, where can we find you on socials and how do we get in touch?
Oh, yes, thank you. So my website is emilybrown.photography. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. If you just search for Emily Brown Photography, you will find me in a baggy burgundy cardigan.
Baggy burgundy cardigan. Thank you, Emily. Amazing. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for joining us there. And Hayden, what do you think about that interview?
One of the key takeaways for me is that, like with the podcast, the whole point is talking to business owners and leaders around sustainability, the environment, the community, all these different things in the realm of benevolence. And I suppose there'll be people listening out there that own their own businesses that they might just think, oh, it's not something that can be applied to my company. And I think photography is one of those where you just, your own mindset or the sort of prejudice there a little bit is just that you think, oh, I've got my camera and I go from A to B taking shoot. I'm not trying to downsize what the work is, but as in when you think of the components involved compared to like my own company in grounds maintenance, there's so many aspects there. We're with nature, we're in the wilderness, it's all around people, building up a team of people. So there's a lot there to do with the community, with employees, as a team, and with the environment. Whereas photography, videography, or like in particular things online, or like in your own industry, Dave, like talking where you're very much reliant on technology, it's hard to grasp on how you could do things to become more environmentally friendly, more sustainable, and do more within the community. And Emily's really achieved that and touched on it and given a good example of exactly how we can do that. No matter what business we're in, we can all practice benevolence in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, it's really got me thinking since we recorded that interview, what can I do? Because again, you're saying like Emily, she had that one area of her business. She had her photo albums, which are made from paper. So that's perfect to make sure that they're all reliably sourced.
Sustainably sourced.
Sustainably sourced, thank you. But then also, you know, it's paper. It gave her the inspiration to plant a tree. And that's kind of symbolic as well when you think about it. These people are starting a new life together. So it's, you know, they're starting new life. Her tree is new life. It's new growth, which is really nice. What can I do for my business? I've been thinking about it a lot. At the moment...
Plant a tree, Dave. Plant a tree.
Yeah, but I want to do something a bit different. I mean, the only thing I can really think of at the moment is like giving a percentage of my profits to a charity directly, or it could be a charity of the client's choice, which would be really nice as well. But to me, that just feels a bit soulless. So
I know what you mean. It feels empty and just sort of writing a check over. I mean, obviously, a large sum of money can make a big, or even a little sum of money can make a big difference to people. But I do know what you mean. Well, you said in one of the previous episodes, we talked about what you do with like giving your time and your expertise to charities and other organisations that are doing particularly benevolent things. So I think that an element of that, and just sort of maybe structuring it more. Find some great companies that are doing great things for the environment and sustainability and benevolence overall, and then give them a free video, Dave.
Get them on the podcast first. Yeah, I guess.
Or even down to things like the materials you're buying, or
that's it. I'm trying to think of like the processes, because
an electric car, Dave.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about the processes at the moment, like, because it's all digital. I don't have this physical item, so it's hard to offset it. The only thing I'm really offsetting is electricity, but the only thing I can think of doing that is installing solar panels on the roof and all this sort of stuff, and I'm just not there yet.
Or use green energy suppliers in particular. Just go for green energy suppliers, which is what I'm doing at my own office at the moment, sorting out, although that's only internet I need to sort out. So
that's
again,
true. It's all the little things,
there.
isn't
it? Exactly. And I think that's one thing that I've always had in my mind, is that, and I've started to come to grips with, is that as a small business, you have to do things one by one. I mean, even as a large business, you've got to meet with a board of directors and get a unanimous vote. But it's all in baby steps, and it's not about you haven't got to go from 0 to 100 straight away and become a certified B Corp. You haven't got to become wholeheartedly carbon negative. It's all about taking those steps to progress gradually over time. And as long as you are putting the effort in, and as long as you are taking the necessary steps and researching and building on it, then that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's got to think about the steps though. I mean, especially when it's just you on your own, it's like, well, I've also got to run the business, you know. I've got to do the marketing, I've got to do the work, and it's like, okay, what's the smallest thing I can do? I guess that's a start. The
other thing is just like what Emily touched on in your own life. What little things can you do? Like simple things like a reusable straw that you have, or a reusable coffee cup that you take out. If you're, well, I mean, no one's going anywhere at the moment, but if you're going out on shoots, and you often make a stop to a coffee shop and grab yourself a nice mocha frappuccino.
Mocha frappuccino?
I don't even know if I made that up, but myself personally, I like a latte. But reusable cup. I got myself a nice little bamboo bumblebee reusable cup. So
you'll like this one. Use a tea diffuser instead of buying tea bags.
There you go. Never idea.
Yeah, so you can get they're pretty cheap. Just get like a little metal one that's got laser drilled holes, tiny little holes, and do it like that. So then I put the loose leaf after it's done. I put it in the compost, and then I get some really nice compost at the end of the year as well. And Perfect. You're not throwing away lots of bleached tea bags into a landfill as well.
That's true. If you want more ideas, Dave, you can check out on my own company socials. I do a weekly tip, Sustainable Saturdays. Yeah, see?
I like that little plug. Get that in there.
Subtle.
So if anyone has their own little tips for sustainability they'd like to share, how can they do that?
They can find us on socials, Benevolent Business Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, and also reach out to ourselves, me, Hayden Bloomfield, and you, David Proud, on LinkedIn. And also you can email me, hayden.bloomfield@hotmail.com. And one last thing I'm going to put a plug into and shout out is this where you're saying about doing your own little things as a small business or just as an individual at home. And Instagram, I follow that's amazing. That's called My Plastic Free Home.
Okay.
So it's, I don't know the woman's name. It's a lady, but you can guess what it is by the title. She has a plastic free home. So every day she's just uploading on her posts and in her stories just different things she does around the house to be plastic free.
I like that. I'm following that right now. And who have we got on next week?
Next week we're going to be joined by Pip Lawrence.
Cool. And she's another wellbeing practitioner, wellbeing in the workplace.
She's the wellbeing director.
Cool. Until that time, see you next week.
See you next week.